Let's jump straight into our first session on this stage. We're going to be having from Droplet, talking a little bit about Droplet NEVERTRUST when zero trust just isn't enough. And for that, we've got the wonderful Barry Daniels, who's CEO of Droplet, who's come up here to join us today. Please join me in giving Barry a huge welcome.
Morning, everyone. This is a strange and a first for me. Presenting to everyone with headsets on while you're talking out to an audience is a very strange occurrence indeed. For those of you in the room, and I've been getting a few hands up, who's heard of Droplet before? Few hands, a few smattering, but most of you are newbies to the technology, and hopefully we've enticed you in on the whole piece, because everyone seems to be on a sort of zero trust journey at the moment as the de facto way to do security. But as we've seen through lots and lots of high profile breaches over the last sort of little while, they're not always the best way to protect infrastructures and have been compromised over recent times. Some of the more high profile ones are people with the biggest, deepest pockets, perhaps, like the MOD, that you think have access to everything in the world, and yet, you know, in the major news as the most recent story, there's the breach through their supply chain, through poor security, through the ways in which they do. And the thing to say around sort of zero trust, it is a great way to do security. There's no way it is a move forward. Having the gates and the barriers throughout your infrastructure, micro-segmentation perhaps in there, it's a massive leap forward. The difficulty that people still have in most of their infrastructure is they have a legacy layer. Any of you here, and I'm sure there are some companies here today at this speech that have legacy in their infrastructure somewhere across. I think I've even seen some familiar faces I've seen on our stand over in the corner. If you want to follow up conversations after this, we have Derek here who will look after Scotland for us. So he's your local representative. And we go out to market via the large SIs and VARs. So up in Scotland here, it tends to be XMA, Computer Center, Softcap as the main three. We got Jira IT actually here in the room today. For some of you in the oil and gas space, I think is a mainstay for Jira IT. So that's our routes to market. But getting back onto the traction of what we have here within, what's this never trust? Where's this zero trust versus the never trust? And three things to really point out, and that is that there was a big leap forward as well in the compliance standards. So one thing that we always say within Droplet is we take care of compatibility, we take care of security, which ultimately leads to compliance. Now, why is that important for you? Well, last March, the NCSE upped the game on what is a pass now for Cyber Essentials Plus. And a lot of what people were doing, like things like the big sort of security vendors like Trend Micro that we're using, sandboxing that we're using, technologies like app packaging to take things forward to the latest and greatest. Well, they have APIs, they have SDKs, they have routes back into the underlying operating system. And if vulnerability is sitting in the code base itself of the application, that can then be used to elevate people's privileges. It can then be used as an attack mechanism out to the network. And once someone elevates to an identity that has admin gateways across, that's the end of your even zero trust architecture to a large degree. Because if you can fake an AI engine, if you can fake the way in which you've got an identity, you can suddenly still go through all of the gaps. There's nothing protecting the way that those legacy systems are sitting on your infrastructure. You can air gap them for sure. That brings around operational challenges in that case. The NHS that we deal with a lot, they have an operational nightmare since WannaCry, where they've totally air gapped off their CNC machines, for example. Now to get the scans from the CNC machines out into the software that needs to run for everyone to collaborate on, they run around with USB sticks. They have to then copy files onto those USB sticks, take that, they get lost. That's a data breach. The operational challenges that brings of the data isn't in the right place. what we've been able to do in some of our NHS customers and some of the largest ones like Great Ormond Street, up here we've got Tayside as a customer, is we're able to put those back onto the network with the technology that we use that does comply to Cyber Essentials Plus. Now that they've outlawed all of these different application packaging, sandboxing technologies, they've also brought in further complexity. Bring your own device. If you have any contractors now, that's now in scope for the Cyber Essentials audit. So you've now got to think about, how am I protecting these weird outliers to my system, bringing them into my system, and then how do I make them compliant? How am I going to go forward with that standard? The bespoke apps have to be taken out of scope now. So if you have custom built applications, they're seen as untrusted. So the same governance goes on that for Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus now. So as your audits come around this year, you're going to find it harder and more difficult to gain your passes. The good news is there's help at hand. Within what we do here within Droplet and the NeverTrust model, we can actually truly isolate away from. We sit as a container technology. It's our own ones and zeros. This is not a rebadged Docker. It's not a rebadged Kubernetes. It's been built secure by design from the get-go, where we have no APIs, we have no SDKs like the Dockers and the Kubernetes. And that's a moving feast, like it is with Microsoft, always fighting the bad guys, always exploiting those routes in. When you have a large attack surface like they have, great technologies for developers, great way to scale across, scale up, scale down. But because of the very nature of that platform, because of the way they've built it, because of the API integration suite, it's always going to be open to attack. It's always going to be there as a surface that a hacker is going to go after. Within Droplet, we've built a technology that doesn't have APIs, that doesn't have SDKs, that has no routes in. We protect across the whole piece. And that's how we've managed to, through this NeverTrust model, help customers like EDF Energy on the nuclear and non-nuclear networks, MOD, government sites we're deployed on, NHS, as I've said before, large enterprises like the AA. We have those systems in place. They've achieved those Cyber Essentials accreditations, Cyber Essentials Plus in some cases, and NIST 2 for some of our customers as well. And we've been able to go through the audits, the pen tests, and be ratified as a good solution. We've done a lot of work with the NCSE at the beginning of this year, and we're now working on what will be the cyber resilience frameworks for what will now replace eventually Cyber Essentials later on this year, and looking at what known good standards are like to future-proof applications, to break the application management lifecycle and enable, as a container, you to sit above the operating system, above the hypervisor on your servers, and protect them not just for today, tomorrow, or the next 3 or 5 year cycle, but for as long as they need to persist. So we have the Droplet client. The Droplet client can sit on any operating system, safe away from the hacker, with a firewall that never trusts any inbound connection at all, ever. You cannot configure this. Most of the biggest security breaches come from a misconfiguration. And just the complexity that you have to deal with. You have lots and lots of different layers that we'll come into in just a moment on my slides that talk about all the different products that you have to integrate in. Only takes one thing to be configured wrong, and suddenly the pack of cards comes tumbling down. We at Droplet take away that fragility and allow you to configure it without being touched by the administrator. We've configured it so we never trust any inbound connection. It could be a 0-day threat. It doesn't matter to us. We see it as external traffic. We do not rely on identity, which is the biggest flaw in security models. Because the hackers know that, they elevate their privileges, they get an identity through the vulnerability estate, and boom, they're through all your gates. So from the point of view of the listeners, the sniffers, we encrypt across the network as well. We can sit on any cloud. We can sit on any hypervisor. We can sit offline at the edge for OT technologies as well. The flexibility in Droplet is really an any-to-any, where do you want to live model. And it's where it makes sense for you. Where should your infrastructure sit? Should it sit in the cloud? Is it sensitive? Do you want to keep it on premise? Does it sit at the edge in a field with poor connectivity, so therefore needs to live offline? Is it on a warship, which we do, and we can put it on a remote branch office solution, running on a little Intel NUC with low heat facilities. You can run all your old stuff and new stuff in that in a segmented way within Droplet, wherever you need to run. And we encrypt that traffic between the two. There's one way in and one way out with Droplet. Because we sit as a layer above, you have to have a Droplet client. That can run alone at the edge offline if it needs to. But typically what we see is it's talking back to a centralized server somewhere, a multi-tiered application. All of those can talk within the Droplet framework over an encrypted network. In the labs at the moment, for our military customers, we're looking at quantum bit ready encryption. We currently have the greatest, latest security systems for protecting us in our encryption layer today, but we're going beyond that for what the future is going to bring with quantum bit encryption as well, so that we're ready for that future threat. We've been very fortunate, and this has been ratified by the NCSE, to prevent state actor attacks on critical national infrastructure within this last year. Hence why we're involved with them quite closely now, and hence why they are testing our things in the labs, and we're doing more and more now on getting that awareness through our partners, through the ecosystem, like the computer centers and Jira that are here today. So reiterating, any device, we don't care. You can run it on any operating system, Chromebook, Linux, Mac, or the predominant player is Windows. You can sit Droplet in any of those environments. You can run on-prem, you can run in any cloud, on any hypervisor, we don't care. We sit as our layer above that. And ultimately, we do something quite unique as a product. We protect lots and lots of mission critical applications. I'm going to take a customer of ours, Compass Group. They had the best intentions. They'd been through the app packaging route. They'd made their bespoke, custom-built application that's unique to them. They app packaged it through MSIX and App Attach, and they placed it on the latest operating system. It was Windows 10 when we got involved with them. They went through the pen test with the MOD, because what they do as a company is they supply all the catering for each of the MOD sites around the globe and other military establishments for other governments. So they have a global business with multiple millions of pounds worth of contract at stake. And the pen testers found the vulnerability in the app. So even though they'd gone through best due diligence, they'd app packaged and run on the latest operating system, the vulnerability was in the ones and zeros of the code of the app. They were able to elevate their privileges, they were able to attack out on the network, and therefore it failed their Cyber Essentials Plus audit. We got engaged with them in the March. By the June, we had it all done, deployed across each system, re-pen tested, redeployed, and Cyber Essentials Plus tick. And every year subsequent now for the last 4 years, tick the boxes. They've moved forward to Windows 11. It was a seamless migration because we sit above the operating system. We don't care. Upgrade, patch, do all the things you need to do at an operating system level. Your apps are not going to be affected because they run in a separate kernel inside the container, free and away from any intrusion. So it gives you that peace of mind. It gives you that future-proof ability to be able to keep those operating systems up to date, safe in the knowledge you're not going to affect those applications because they're running in a separate kernel space. So, from the point of view, we're looking after these mission critical applications at Droplet. They sit inside this NeverTrust framework. We can control the data paths. So you can then look at, okay, what does this app need? Where does it need to talk to? One, does it need to be inside Droplet? If not, we need to open a stateful port to allow access to that and then close it down afterwards. So you can still have an operability into the outside world if you need to. No inbound is ever allowed, but for outbound communication, for only those paths and only those routes that are allowed are open. So you can only do the job that that application needs. You can't then go fiddle around with an operating system. You can't then go and elevate your privileges. You are completely locked down as a user. And that then takes us on to the endpoint. We sit wherever you want to on an endpoint. I would imagine most of you are a Windows estate, but for the likes of Oxford University, they're a customer, slightly different use case. It's more of a replacement for Citrix in their model, where they take all the applications, they have a droplet container, they have the challenge of bring your own device, where they have lots of students turning up with their own devices, they have no idea what security's on there. So in a way to protect those, they put a droplet container on them that can't be hacked in from the host device, even if it's compromised, because we never trust anything on the inside, not relying on identity. They put all the apps inside their containers, and then they have, per professor's syllabus, they have all the apps they need to deploy to a Mac, to deploy to a Chromebook, to deploy to a Windows system. It doesn't matter. You're freeing up that choice. One other one where we prevented the state actor attack from an endpoint. SCADA systems on a wind farm. We deal with natural power. I'll talk about them in just a moment, but we were able to prevent that state actor attack and operationalize a 1.5 day process, deploying 3 laptops down to 10 minutes on 1 laptop, because they all sit in multiple container structure across the board that our client goes and picks out the different containers. It's a shortcut on the end user's desktop. They're completely unaware that Droplet's there, allowing the operation to run just as it did before, unaware of the knowledge of all this security that's going on from Droplet. So massive, massive benefits. The other thing with EDF Energy, we took them from 300 servers down to 60 servers, replacing all of the Citrix infrastructure. That's a massive green tick footprint on your net neutral carbon play. To install Droplet, and we offer free proof of concepts here. Contact Derek, come and see us on the stand. Happy to organize that for you guys, so you don't have to, believe slideware, which is all great and wonderful. Put it in your own infrastructure. Put it in your own nuances, all your own little quirks. Test it out, try it out, pen test it. We're a great believer in seeing is believing. And we don't want to sit here and tell you that we're going to be the best thing since sliced bread. Try it. You'll see for yourself. Go and do all the security posture. And we'll offer you 2 days of professional services to do that. One migration customer, we went from what would have been a 10-month project to migrate servers, 1,000 servers out of a Russian St. Petersburg data center for an American company that had sanctions in place from the American government if they didn't remove data out of Russia. Traditional ways would have taken 10 months. We converted it in the St. Petersburg data center into Droplet, got it all working because we changed nothing, stitched together the network, and then moved it over to Azure London. It took us about 6 weeks. 10 months to 6 weeks. The operational ease of that, because we sit at a layer above, we don't care what the underlying operating system is. We don't have to restitch every application to talk to a new set of back-end infrastructure. It went from a VMware platform to an Azure platform in 6 weeks for 1,000 servers. That's powerful, just in that story itself. Then they've got all this security baked in now, and they deliver our applications in a unique way. It's quite cool. From the point of view of the application space, obviously we protect the application to an nth degree. We've locked it into this NeverTrust container. We only give access to the application that's needed. They don't get access to all the other underlying operating system. So they can't mess with that. We've taken away that threat. And then over the network, as I said earlier, we encrypt that network, and we're going to enhance that encryption over the next 12 months. We've already got the latest and greatest. We're going to go beyond the latest and greatest and actually future-proof against the quantum challenge that's going to come up. And the perimeter defense, this NeverTrust, you can't configure it. You can't allow anything in. You would have to come to us for a bespoke build if there's an edge use case. I've got one customer that says, no, we have a push mechanism and it has to talk from outside in. We don't control that outside entity. We built them a custom model. That is punching a hole in NeverTrust. But by default, and the way we work, generally how things work, is it talks out from the container and then closes down the stateful route. And so, as a perimeter defense, again, the biggest Security furboil is the human error, the misconfiguration. We're a stack that you're seeing over all of this that protects even the human layer. Because you've locked that human down, he can't then go and play with these tools. He hasn't got an operating system to play with. He hasn't got a route to elevate his privileges. He's been totally and utterly isolated down so he can only do that given job in that given way and nothing else. Tell me a product that sits across the OSI model, the 7 OSI model across these in one single product that takes care of all the things I've described. I don't know of one, unless anyone, and I'm happy to take a hands up here because I'd love to know what the competition looks like, but I don't know of any other product that has all these onion layers. And security is about onion layers. I'm not saying take away your other security. You've got some great security vendors here today, but I bet you haven't got the droplet onion layer. And I bet you've got the challenge that we solved that at the moment you're all scratching your heads on in most cases of, I've got a problem here, how am I going to deal with it? And when you take down all of those different layers and what NeverTrust can actually take care of for you in one hit product, and we're not super expensive either. Speak to the reseller community. We've got some people on the stand today. Come and see us. We'll do the proof of concept. We'll show you free of charge what we can do, how we can do it, what we can do for you. And then it becomes like a pre-production concept in a way, because we've taken your things, we've shown it on your network, you've tested it with end users, make sure performance is all there as it needs to be. You've freed it up. You can now got the choices to move it around the clouds. You can keep it in-house, put it on OT security at the edge and future-proof it for the 10, 15, 20 years it needs to go out and live. Think cars, planes, trains that we deal with. Nuclear, edge devices on OT, the sensors, valve sensors. All of this technology has to go and live for 10, 15, 20 years. Legacy is never going to go away. And guess what? All those that are I'm on a great journey. I've got all my things in a modern operating system. I've upgraded everything. Great. Then come and see me in 3 or 5 years' time, because you're going to have the same challenges again. You'll never break the application management lifecycle in that trick that Microsoft have got you on the treadmill of. They're always going to have vulnerabilities because of the API nature of their business. There's going to be an attack surface. Clever guys are going to find a way through. NeverTrust is the future as we see it in security. The NCSE like what we're doing. Although you can never get an endorsement rubber stamp, we've been in their labs, we've gone through our systems, they've gone through our processes. We're going through the cyber resilience labs to hopefully get more of a tick box around the security credentials, but we've already prevented state actor attacks. We already have those live use case stories. A big question that might be burning in you, well, this is great, right? But I've got this old crap over here in the corner, and if I turn it off or if I touch it, I have no idea how it was built. Fred, who used to look after it, he's no longer with the business, or unfortunately passed, and so we're in a world of pain. We know we've got to keep it alive. No one dare touch that. We can do a lift and shift for you, either on the physical endpoint with all your apps in, or the servers. And we can literally take an exact copy of what is, convert it into the droplet model, and get it up and running. So you can do it in a risk-free way. You might have to take a small maintenance window to do like an OVA export, or a VMDK, or I don't know, a VHD copy of the data that's there from a backup. But once we have it, we automate the conversion of it, stand it up in isolated instances, test it properly, test it with end users, so you de-risk that transition. And you don't have that struggle of getting from where you are to where you need to be. So, to summarize through, oh, I've gone one too far. Summarize through. You've got the green credentials of Droplet. If you were looking, and if you have things like Citrix, if you have things like VMware, we can sit on any hypervisor. If you're subject to the Broadcom tax, if you're subjected to the Citrix tax, come and see us. We will save you money. We will future-proof what you're doing. We will free it up, and we will give you a green reduction CO2, because we will definitely use less infrastructure than you're currently using. The way in which it's set up with the connection brokers and the whole infrastructure of those platforms are very heavy, very expensive to configure, run, administer, look after. Droplets, simplified. We've embraced the complexity to deliver simplicity. But see it for yourself. Don't believe slideware. Come and try it for yourself. With the OT piece, we can take care of that operational technology edge piece. That challenge that you've got where it's got to live for 10, 15, 20 years out in the field. Break the application management lifecycle, make sure it's protected for its lifetime in a never trust model. Tick those boxes on the compliance piece. We've been through several audits. We're not the only bit of the audit. There's lots of other things you have to do on a Cyber Essentials Plus audit. So we're not, put it in Droplet, you'll get it. There's lots of other things to do. But we'll take care of your biggest pain point, typically the legacy layer, because it's a challenge for a lot of people now, especially with those new standards coming through. And ultimately, reduce that complexity as well, as I showed you through the OSI model. All the integrations for all the different systems that you may need. If your budgets are constrained, rip some of those out, put Droplet in place, add it as the onion layer you haven't got that protects more of the layers than any other product, and save yourself some cost, therefore paying for what you would want within Droplet. So that's a way to perhaps free budgets. How am I doing for time? 3 minutes. 3 minutes to have a look at some of the case studies that I talked to, and then we'll go to some Q&As. So I spoke about these guys a moment ago. This is Natural Power. They had a massive challenge, as you can imagine. They are like mission control. They're a central operational control for wind farms and solar farms around the country. They had the complexities that they had to ingest, DOS, Windows XP, Windows 7, because that's the operational technology platform that's running on these wind turbines or solar panels. How are they going to protect their infrastructure? How are they going to tick the boxes delivering to critical national infrastructure as a client? They need a Cyber Essentials Plus. It's almost impossible to achieve that I know of in that model without Droplet. I don't know of any other product that could do it. You can isolate on networks, but then that doesn't work for them because of the nature of they don't own the end part. That's owned by the SCADA manufacturers. There was a West Coast wind farm attack last year in March. At a local level, we were not engaged with the SCADA manufacturers. They had no operational control locally to the whole of that farm. Totally ransomware, locked down by a state actor attack. Natural Power, because they deployed Droplet, were completely isolated from the threat, had full operational control, and didn't get affected by the breach one bit, meaning it wasn't a national news story. That's a powerful statement there of something that known vulnerabilities in, we were able to protect where other security, and they weren't skimping at the site. They had all of the latest, greatest, checkpoints and all of the big firewall products that you're looking for. State actors are coming through those. They know the technologies. They know there are routes through. There will always be those zero-day threats, especially in that space. Take that gun away from them. From our point of view, to reiterate, I don't care if it's zero-day. I don't care if it's brand new, if it's created yesterday. We see it as external data. You can't elevate your privileges because I'm just going to see you as external traffic and drop you. So even a zero-day threat like they were affected by, we were unaffected. We protected a national news story. Okay. One of our largest customers, EDF, on the nuclear and non-nuclear networks. Again, it's a great sort of reiteration of what we've been able to do. We got a lovely email from them a couple of months ago now, thanking us for all of the job that we've done, taking away Citrix and replacing it now totally in delivering it via Droplet, enabling them to do all their pen tests, enable them to get through all the compliance checks that they have, which is very, very high level. We've now been pen tested just there by 5 different companies. No one's ever breached through the droplet layer. They find vulnerabilities in the app itself. As I explained earlier, we can control that, we can lock that down, we can make sure that that can only do the job that it does in a true isolation layer, therefore getting you your compliance standards. Another military customer of ours, this was from a partner that came to us in panic. They had promised the customer that they could upgrade them from, I think it was 2008 or 2003, and they wanted to get to the latest, greatest 2022. They have financial penalties in place, and they had 10 days until these financial penalties kicked in. And they found a bug and a problem, meaning the application didn't work properly with their repackaging that they'd done to work on the new operating system. So they came to us cap in hand. Can you help? Crazy, absolutely crazy. 10 days to do the whole thing. Yeah, okay, we'll give it a shot. Day one, we went through our automation process, converted these servers, put them into the droplet format, stood up the infrastructure. Day two, pen testers engaged, started the pen test. Day three, end users were deployed and they started testing functionality. All in all, by day 9, fully deployed, operational, save them from their penalties. Droplet isn't the blocker. We were fortunate that they had the energy to do it quick. Normally, Droplet will take 3-4 months because you have to go through change controls, you have to test it, you have to get everyone's buy-in. That takes time in an organization. But that's just to give you some idea of the speed in which we can work and the speed in which we can solve some of the challenges that possibly some of you are facing out there and why you're sitting in this session. So I'm going to open the floor to questions if I can.
Thank you very much. Let's give Barry a huge round of applause. Thank you. Does anyone want to kick us off with questions? We've got two lovely ladies at the back with some microphones that can come around. I've got a couple.
I'm going to pick on Derek if no one has a question.
Well, I've got a couple as well.
I'm sure I forgot something, Derek, that you'll remind me of.
Would you like to add something, Derek? Go on. And then we do have a question if you could.
Any questions at all? Don't be shy. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
You mentioned the UK takes on average 38 days to identify a cyber attack and 43 to recover.
Yep.
Is there anywhere in the world that's a lot quicker than this, and what are they doing?
That's a question probably for the NCSE that will probably have those stats somewhere rather than a droplet question. What we're key considered of is we don't care about that external threat. We've built a new way to do security. It's a different way to look at security in a way that I don't care if it's a brand new attack. I don't care if it's created 5 minutes ago. We're just going to drop it. And that's a totally different way to look at the security model. And we still got the functionality baked in, and that's a bit more of an architectural discussion between us of how we can still set all the operational needs for your app inside Droplet to make sure it runs, to make sure you have the right privileges, to make sure from an application point of view, you still control it from an identity point of view inside Droplet, but from an outside in, you can't get in. We don't rely on identity.
Thank you, Barry. Any other questions, or I can jump in with one of mine. I was curious. This is a great example of the Royal Armouries where you showed this 10-day turnaround of deployment, right? Because my question I was thinking as you were speaking was about the reality of how you actually integrate technology and how you, especially when you're taking this entirely new approach, right? What do you tend to advise your potential clients or whatever? What are you looking for from them to make sure that it's as smooth a process as possible when you're going through this quite a big change, arguably? So
our biggest challenge sometimes is when we get involved with the big systems integrators and all of the process and politics, let's put it that way, that applies at that level. And that can slow the process down quite a bit. In some cases, although we've got the likes of TCS and Capgem, they're already fully trained up in Droplet and understand the product. Some of the new ones we're just bringing on, I see our friend here, Richard from DXE, in the front of the audience here that we're working with and training their staff now. So there's a better availability because droplet is an unknown quantity in some cases. There can be that nervousness, which is why we take the approach we do. Try it. Actually go through that process and be open about it. We're happy to go through the security boundaries. We're happy to go through with your pen testers. Don't believe what we claim. Go test it. Go prove it for yourself in your own environment. Make sure that it is going to be fit for purpose. Make sure it is going to work for the end users. And that process can be, we're not the bottleneck in that process because change control management, people's diaries being through, all the projects that you guys have got on board, it becomes, where does the profile sit? But going back to the product itself, if you can name another product that can both save you money, take away the headaches, offer a security system across the 7 steps OSI model, I'd hope to think that we can be prioritized a bit more because that as a business risk and what that means to a business, you only have to look at the reputational damage in the media over the last month.
Yeah.
Of what that can cause to an organization. We help the IT managers sleep at night. I used to use an analogy of go back before the internet as an IT administrator. For some of you that have a few more years in the bag of experience, you used to be able to put defense at the edge of your data center. You knew where your servers were. You knew where the end user was on a laptop or a computer under the desk. You had control. Now in the world, you've got so much to worry about. And every security vendor is talking about it. The boundary of your security posture is so wide and so broad. How do you protect that? We give you back that control. We enable that centralization to be in your control because you can deploy to anywhere. You can put those controls in this droplet container and then deploy it to the edge, deploy it in a cloud, deploy it wherever you want, with the controls in there that no one can fiddle with, no one can get. The admin privileges are taken away when you deploy. That can't be got at, that can't be changed. And so we're taking you back 15, 20 years to where you had better controls, you were able to protect yourself better.
Add to that, Barry, as well.
Sorry?
Please add to that. Hi guys, obviously Barry mentioned my name earlier on, so I'm Derek. I am the local Scottish salesperson for Droplet. Some of the use cases that I'd like to make you think about as well is Droplet, don't pigeonhole us into just legacy, because today's modern is tomorrow's legacy. And every 3 to 5 years, we're all having to upgrade software to keep in the same path as Microsoft. Droplet's unique way of delivering applications allows organizations to break that life cycle. So for example, let's say every 3 to 5 years, you have a software which you are upgrading every 3 to 5 years. It's costing you maybe 3/4 of your budget. We can extend that to 6 years, 9 years, 10 years, 12 years. You make that decision, not the software vendor. So you can actually control that life cycle. What we can also do is, if you're out of support and you've got a high cost of achieving cyber essentials and extended support from Microsoft, put it inside Droplet, get yourself cyber accredited, and remove those high costs associated with extended support. So there's a number of different ways we can help. Definitely, if you're interested, you have a use case that we've mentioned today, come up to the stand and talk to us and we'll elaborate a bit more on it. But I just want to make sure you understand we have so many different use cases as a product to help you guys save money, secure your infrastructure, and migrate from old to new.
Thank you, Derek. We'll probably get time for just one final one because we started a few minutes late. If anyone else has got a question that they want to add. Final countdown. Okay, cool. I think we can wrap up a little bit early and give you guys a little bit more time to have a cup of coffee before the next session. Please join me in thanking Barry and Derek very much for the presentation.
Thank you, guys.